All right. And three, two, one. What's going on, good people? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to another episode of the Conflict Management Show. We are in a combat sport show, hence the name. So we cover the news, the fights, and the highlights going on in the world of combat sports. And I am your co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Half Man, Half Amazing, the awkward, awesome one. Mr. Main Event, Malik Miles, coming to you live, and my co host.
The future Hall of Famer, one namer, the oracle of business decisions at the UFC. It's Edon, and we're back one more time with you guys talking about what's going on in the MMA verse. And I wanted to start off because it's a fight night this week, and it's at a different time. So before we hop into that one, I wanted to get your opinion. So there's been a little bit more news to come out of GFL, and they had their like draft kind of thing, which I wanted to get your take on because I listened to the interview with the like commissioner or the president or whoever that guy is of the GFL, the like main person behind it all, and he basically kind of made it sound like it's kind of still just a normal fight promotion, just with some fun little like window dressing kind of tricks and stuff because ultimately this wasn't a real live draft, obviously, because some people don't want to move to wherever team they're drafted to or whatever team they'd be traded to, and they don't necessarily want to work with other coaches other than the coaches they've been working with. So it's kind of a team, kind of not a team. They'll move fighters around to make the fights that people want to see. So what do you think about all of that and how it's played out, and then his kind of comments on it?
Okay, so yeah, I actually, as we talked about before, cautiously optimistic about the new organization. If you don't know, GFL is the Global Fight League. It is a new MMA promotion, I guess, sports league, sports organization. They want to that's going to start up. They want to be different. They're not saying they're an MMA organization. They're like we're a sports organization, like the NFL, like the MLB. I think that so I have notes, right? I
Mhm.
saw the draft. As I told you before, I was interested. I was like, hey, they make this very easy for me. I didn't see it when it first happened, but I guess I saw the on YouTube elsewhere. So I have notes. I have notes on like the pros and cons of what I thought they did really well, what I thought could have been better. The pros and cons of the event, right?
Mm.
For the draft part that you were mentioning, I kind of wished that like overall I thought the fighters they picked up, the fighters that they have, good. I
Mm.
enjoy I'm looking forward to at least seeing how the fights are gonna match up. But one thing I felt was a missed opportunity was making it okay, clearly they have a lot of money, right? To
Mm.
like throw around for this organization, right? You got people like Yoel Romero, Chris Weidman, you're getting people like Robelis Despain. I heard he's supposed to be a part of this organization. You're seeing Alexander Gustafsson. You
Tony
got
Ferguson.
Tony Ferguson, another big sign. You got up and coming people who are undefeated coming from Argentina and like all these people and all that stuff, right? So you obviously have the money, and there was a lot of money put into the trailer, which we'll get to in a second. I wish, I think that what would have been a good opportunity for improvement or uh, a good opportunity to move forward with the first day of it. Make it instead of spending money on the trailer, the crazy amount of money on the trailer, and whatnot. I would have really liked to see a big draft. You know what I mean? Like in
Mm.
person. Like spend the money. It's a one night thing. Make it an extravaganza. Make an event out of it, right? Just like how the NFL draft does. Hey, you only get one chance to make a first impression, right? And I think that while I think they did overall, the draft was good, and I thought it was cool. I think that one of the things I would have really liked to see is, hey, bring all these people. Hey, say, hey, we're gonna meet up in New York, wherever you want to meet up at, New York, Texas, Chicago, wherever, right?
Mm.
And if you want to separate yourself out as a, hey, we're the new kids in town. We're gonna set up an organization. We want to set up live viewing, all that type of stuff. Hey, have all the team managers come out and have like a little booth, you know what I mean? Or like an area that says like Team New York over it, or like at least on the broadcast be like Team New York, Team Dubai, Team London. And as people, and have all the fighters sit in the center, like in a pit thing, and as people get drafted to their teams, you go and sit with your team, or go sit with their, at least it helps with the visual of like, oh, these guys are going to be on these different teams. These guys are going to be on, and these gals are going to be, these are going to be the teams moving forward for the next 6 to 4 months, right? I think that would have been cool. And I think that would have been a cool idea to bring, when you have a big event like that, and there's a lot of interest in kind of the GFL right now. So if you would have had a big in-person draft, oh man, that's going to bring in fighters, that's going to bring in media, that's going to bring in just the fans, you know what I mean? Because they want to make it interactive. Hey, that's the perfect time to interact your future fan base, the media. They're going to invite, you won't even have to put anything out, because the media are going to put it out for you, saying like, man, this was a great this and that. While there was some flub ups with, I think the draft, I think overall it went well. I think that it was kind of hard for me to find it. I thought they would have their own YouTube channel. I don't know if they did or not. I tried to look up GFL. I don't think it was. I ended up seeing the draft through someone else who ended up posting. I guess I was looking up GFL draft, and there was like snippets of the draft based on like other people posting snippets of it, and then eventually I actually ended up seeing the draft right on YouTube, and I was like, okay, cool. The good part, I'm gonna say pros. One of the personalities they have working the desk, Alex Windham, she did a great job. I thought she did great with the recap, talking with the managers, and the talking about the rivalries. The energy was good overall. I thought she did really great. I think they should keep her moving forward and have her continue to do these events and these recaps and talking with the managers. I thought overall good energy, good vibes. I do like the fact that the founder of GFL is a fight fan. Like it seems like from what I saw, when I see, like, he's like a true fan of just martial arts, combat sports in general. He's a big fight fan. They talked about, about seeing what the fans want to see. He's interested. He watches MMA really closely, watches the UFC. And I think that's a positive, because okay, if you are a super hardcore fight fan and you wanted to make an organization where fight fans are just like having a grand time, I'm here for it. Because at least that means you care enough about this where you want to see this succeed, right?
Mm.
Unlike where I think this is maybe one of the reasons why they just never caught on, like the PFL never like grabbed my attention, I guess, is because while they have good fighters, the PFL's head person has said that they don't watch fighting. They're not necessarily a fight fan, and they see it more of as a business. I mean, we can kind of see what was the result of that, but I feel like as a fan, as a consumer, as a fight fan, wherever it is, if you don't care, or if you're not super into what the product is, how am I as a fan going to care? You know what I mean? Like if someone asks you, hey, what's your favorite fight, top 3 fights of all time, and you go, not really a fight fan, but you run a fight organization, that doesn't necessarily lend me to wanting to go watch your fights, because it's like, okay, it's like when I think it runs into a lot of the problems where anime adaptations or like those movies that get made into live actions off books,
Mm.
and it's made by a company or a film company or whatever it is, and they don't necessarily care about the source material, but they're like, oh, this is a great money grab, this is a great opportunity, and they go and make the movie and it's that's
Yeah,
what it felt
like
like. So
did you see like I got suckered so bad that I saw this in theaters. Did you see the M. Night Shyamalan movie that's based off Avatar The Last Airbender?
oh, high key probably the second worst movie of all time,
Yeah,
in
it's
my
so
personal
bad.
opinion. And it is so bad, and because the cast, like, because the casting doesn't fit the actual show.
Mm.
No, everyone kept on pronouncing the main character's name wrong,
Yeah.
and I was throughout the entire movie, and then I felt like the pacing was bad. The overall general all of it was pretty bad. Then I found out that, if I'm not mistaken, the person who was like Shyamalan or whoever
Mm.
was not a fan of the original
Yeah.
series. He was just like, this seems. I imagine that whoever was in that meeting was like, this is a great IP. We could make a lot of money off of it. I actually did hear there was supposed to be a final season that was supposed to wrap up all of the kind of what happened after they fought Fire Lord Ozai and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And it was supposed to be the thing that wrapped up all of the storylines. But they were like, oh man, a movie, that could be great. And that's how I feel like with that, right? But we saw with Deadpool when Ryan Reynolds show up, and it was kind of like the first introduction of Deadpool wasn't great. With
Yeah.
X-Men Origin or Wolverine Origins, right? When he had the mouth sewed up. That wasn't the best. However, and I think a lot of people were cautiously optimistic about Deadpool once Ryan Reynolds started, because we found out Ryan Reynolds was a big fan of Deadpool, big fan of the comic, the source material,
Mm.
and so we were kind of like, okay, he cares about it a lot. I generally like this character. I'm cautiously optimistic to see how the movie goes, and the movie goes amazing, right? And
Mm.
it goes phenomenally, right? I think that's kind of a similar feeling I have with GFL, where it's like, okay, unlike PFL, you you actually, like, unlike the founder who founded the PFL, you as the person who's running GFL really care about combat sports and you're a really big fan of it. You're a hardcore fan. You watch all the fights. So that means you're if like how they said when you're cooking, you gotta try your food. You know what I mean? If you
Mm.
like the food, chances are other people are gonna like the food. But if you don't like the food, don't give it to anybody else. But if you don't try your own food, how are you gonna know if it's good or not? And so I think it's a similar feeling to that. I have a longer list of stuff that I'm feeling that I liked or didn't like, but let me hear what you're going before I go on a longer tangent.
Yeah, I just thought that I like I like the things as they are with the GFL, like all things considered. I think like when you look at the money that they've spent and who they've managed to get and the names they type of the type of names they have, I think they've done a good job so far. And I think they've done a good job in generating interest with different moves and uh, the like draft thing and the whole idea. I think they've done that really well. I think it might have been a little bit better, I guess is how I'd put it, or more interesting if the main guy wasn't so honest all the time about exactly how things are going to play out. I think he's at a point where, it's he said before that it's taken them, 5 years or so to really get the funding to the level that they want it to really execute this product. They've been looking for the right partners and all that stuff. So I get that he's very excited about what he's finally put together, and this is a long time coming, and you know, projects that take a long time to develop, once they're almost over the finish line, you really just want to say like, "Hey, I did this, and it's almost here. I've put all these pieces together. Isn't this? Then this is going to be great." And you want to make sure that whatever concerns people have, uh, they're not going to be a big issue. But I think it might have been a little bit more effective or interesting if he would have been a little bit more mysterious about how things are going to work. Because when you come out and say, like, we're going to make trades or I'm going to influence trades to make sure that people get the matchups that they want to see, that kind of part of it, it doesn't take me out of it. I'm still like interested in this product and seeing what it ends up being and who ends up being, the kind of home for this, like where this is going to live, like who's broadcasting it. All of those things I'm still interested to see the news on. But I kind of wish he wouldn't have said that part of it. I wish he would have just kept that close to his vest and had more of like a. And again, maybe that was just because of the venue. Like he's on. The interview that I listened to was on Ariel's show, so maybe just in that venue of being there with him, and it's like a hardcore place, so maybe some casuals aren't going to see that interview necessarily, and you could still keep like a kayfabe on your broadcast, but keep a like a shoot in interviews at hardcore MMA places where hardcore MMA fans are going to hear it. So maybe there'll be a little bit of that, but I do like kind of more of a mystery about, well, maybe we won't see those fights, or maybe this is a real thing and there's real team. Like I like a little bit of the, because like the apparently I wasn't watching live, but apparently the one of the people that were showing it in, I guess, a different language or something like that, accidentally went live early with the stream and leaked the the final draft results early. And so they had a last second scramble and moved it around so that it would be the same teams, I think, but it would be in a different order so that it wouldn't look like they just got uh, their results leaked early and that they were doing it live, which I can appreciate. I like the kind of theater, entertainment, wrestling aspect to it. Um, but I just hope that they don't spoil it too much. I hope they keep a kind of mysterious, behind the scenes, kind of elevating. I really should look. When you're talking next, I'll look up this guy's name so I don't keep saying this guy over and over again. But I really think it'd be cool if he was like a Vince McMahon type character where he could call out, because you could still do that where he's going to do that, but instead of saying, "Hey, this is what the fans want to see," how about you're Mr. McMahon and you're going to tell everybody what they want to see, and you're going to get on the microphone and say, "Tonight, so and so and so and so are going to fight," and you're making pretend that you announced it just now when both fighters will have had a camp for each other and they will have known the matchup in advance, but maybe as the viewer, you get to see it right then. Like maybe if it's not the main event or a super hype fight that you announce beforehand to get people to tune in, otherwise you pretend that you're announcing them on the night of the fight. I think something like that would be really cool, where you tune in and you don't always know what you're gonna get, especially if it's one of the lower matchups where maybe you're not as hyped for. Because like when we get to the Riyadh uh, UFC card from this weekend, there's some really interesting fights at the top of the card.
Sleeper card.
Yeah, there's some really interesting fights, and the top of the card has the names that are going to draw people in. But the lower ones that are still going to be good fights, I don't think many people are tuning in necessarily for those. So if you could have a more kind of entertainment or a wrestling kind of theme mix in with that, I think it could be something interesting. And I hope that when they put the broadcast together, and hopefully they've already had these meetings about how this is going to look and how it's going to work, I hope that there's a more entertainment kind of feel to it, and it's not just like PFL kind of tries to do about we're a sports league type of thing. I think there's already enough of that out there. I think we need the mix in with the entertainment kind of piece. I feel like we've moved away from that, especially with the UFC more in the last like 5-10 years. I feel like it's gone away from the kind of entertainmentness into more of a this is a legitimate sport kind of area.
Yeah, the kind of the razzle dazzle of it all. I think it is nice to have, and I think for on my end, I kind of like the kind of breakdown of, hey, it's going to be a 6 month tournament, two semifinal matches, a final match. Hey, the matches are going to be chosen by the people, are going to be chosen for the people, by the people, for the people. You can kind of let them know like who are you most interested in seeing fight, and they will try their best to make those matchups happen for the fight fans. And while I do really enjoy that part of it, it's just like, oh, if you really want to see Yoel Romero go against Chris Weidman or like uh Rashad Evans versus whoever, I think that is really nice to see. And you're like, oh man, and the ones that people are most interested, they're going to put at the top of the card. I think that is really cool, and I think that's really interesting. While I do, because I think a lot of the other parts of the organization right now are still a lot of it shrouded in mystery. So I think having that bit of transparency on the front end is nice, because there's not really, what I mean by shrouded in mystery is that there's not necessarily a location yet,
Mm.
or they're probably working, from what I understand, they're working on a location, and the card isn't fully set yet. And they're like, hey, the card's being worked on, the things being worked on. Hey, all these things will be finished and worked on hopefully by April. And as far as how you're going to see this, hopefully it'll be finished by April. I think that, okay, if all of this is a lot of question marks, at least letting people know, like, hey, just to show y'all, we actually do have things planned out and together. Hey, this is what our plan is so far. So at least gives the people of like, okay, you can't tell me how I'm supposed to watch it, or where I'm supposed to watch it, or where y'all gonna be for me to watch this. At least giving me that part of it is like a bit nice. I was like, is nice to hear. And I think that one of the things that I saw, right, one of the things that I really wish they had is a YouTube channel
Mm.
where you could see like, okay, it's very easy to find them. Because I went to double check just now just to see, and it's a lot of YouTube channels talking about them, but there is no place where it's just like Global Fight League. You know, like the UFC has a YouTube channel, One
Mm.
Championship has a YouTube channel, and so on and so forth, right? I think that while I didn't see the draft live either, when I was searching for Global Fight League, there was a channel that was like, hey, here is the draft. Here's the video of the draft, right?
Mm.
And that's how I end up seeing it. But I think that, well, first I'll go through what I thought I liked first, right? I'll go
Mm.
through bullet points of what I liked, what I thought could be improved, right? So, like I said, Alice Swindling, she was great. I think they should keep her, right, as part of the desk and doing like the interviews and all that. Carolyn Pierce, she did really great too. She was another person who was on the desk with the three other dudes. I think those two did really well and did a really good job of like doing like the interviews and talking and whatnot. I think you could get different dudes. The three dudes who were a part of the desk who were doing the talking. I just wasn't feel like the chemistry didn't feel like it was there. You know, I wasn't sure. I wasn't really feeling those three. And I think if you're trying to get maybe people, like when you think of like the UFC's desk, right? You'll
Mm.
have like Laura Sanko, Michael Bisping, DC, and like Ryan Felder, right? Or
Mm.
you'll have a switch up of Dan Helly, Alan Joban. You'll have whoever, right? Generally all of the people that they have for the UFC desk are interesting or engaged, right? Like I enjoy listening to them talk or here and there. The three that were there, I don't know, I just felt just didn't click for me, you know? I think maybe if you're trying to be like, hey, we're the new kids on the block, new organization, we're here, we're here to put on fun fights for the fans, by the fans. Hey, know about us, right? I think maybe in that case, you have those like professional, because you have the other two ladies that I mentioned who did a great job, boom, right? To give it that like that fight feel, you know, the giving the fight statistics and like the fight knowledge is like very the professional combat sports journalist stuff, and then maybe have like someone like an Andrew Schultz, like who is a fight fan, who is a comedian but is a like a really big fight fan. Have them have have him there. Maybe have another person who's also really engaging and entertaining and like can pull people in. I think have people who are fight fans but also like a personality that like clicks, right? Like when they first did the Contender Series, and they had Snoop Dogg, who's also a fight fan. He was also giving his commentary throughout the fights, and I feel like that's what kind of like pulled a lot of people would be like, oh, Snoop Dogg's here, okay, cool, and then oh yeah, he's giving, because I feel like his reactions to the fights helped sell it more for me personally, right? Especially when I didn't know what the Contender series was. I think that was fun. That was dope. I think that'd have been fine. I think maybe in April, just maybe switch up the lineup a little bit. Instead of the three dudes, find three other dudes. But I really do like how they have that 50% revenue share where they're like, hey, all the money we make, 50% of it's going to the fighters, and then it's going to go into creating a retirement fund for the fighters and like giving them insurance, and it's going to be a 50-50 split as far as revenue goes. I think that's really amazing, and I'm always here for the fighters getting paid and fighters getting their proper payout, right? And I really like how they're trying to take care of the fighters. I think that's really cool, and I hope everything does work out, and it does work out for the best. I thought the lineup of fighters and coaches and managers they have are really cool. Leota Machida is gonna be one of the managers. They got Ray Longo as one of the coaches. They got a pretty like stacked list of people. So all those things, the logo is cool. I like the list of fighters that they got coming out. Seeing all the different teams and how they plan out, all that's really cool. The things I think could have been better that I was not really a fan of. I don't know how you felt about it. I'm not a fan of the music. The like the song that they have. Maybe it's just me. I feel like it felt like I was going into a time capsule. Right? Like I don't know if you felt the same, but it felt very 2008, 2009 like YouTube the AMVs, you know what I mean, where they're doing the little highlight reels and they got music behind it. Didn't it feel like a song that would have been like popping during like 2008, 2009 for like early UFC when it was on Spike TV type?
Yeah, I could see that. I think the kind of production elements and choices, I wonder, are they locked into that right now, or is that just kind of like what it is for right now, especially as they're looking for a broadcast partner who you would imagine is going to have some level of creative control over what that's going to look like and how they want it uh, presented like on their network.
Yeah, because the semi rap rock kind of ish mixture thing, you know what I mean? I feel that I feel like it's a hard one to pull, because I think that like when you think of the UFC, the music, the UFC, right? The original, like from when we were coming up, when it was on like Spike TV and like if you like all the when it was still on the come, right? Remember I think STEM, right? It was like Face the Pain, right?
Hmm.
That song, I remember being like in like high school, middle school, being like, oh, it's a fire song. You know what I mean? I was just like, I like this. I was like, oh man, this sounds cool. And then also this is fun. Like I enjoyed watching the sport, right? WWE going full rap, you know what I mean, and getting Travis Scott, you know what I mean, to do an intro. I would like either one or the other, right? Come up with something really dope, and if you want to go the rap route, I need the beats. I need some. Just go all out, right? Like you got the money, make a song with some fire beats, and then have someone write out a song for your thing, right? And I'm sure they would make something dope. You show them a highlight reel of all the fighters you got, boom, right? I'm sure they can make something great. Or if you want to go full rock, I need something that's gonna give me some energy, right?
Hmm.
Either way, if you go rap or rock, I need energy. I need like, oh man, this is fire. This is a fire track. I would play this while I'm driving to the gym. You know what I mean? And like, I don't know, I tried to listen to it like 3 or 4 times, wasn't feeling it. The trailer, I think I would have liked, they got some superstars, like some real legends type people who are joining their organization, or they're trying to build up these new people, right? Where I think that what I would have liked to see is more of a highlight reel of all the people they got. Like, oh, guys, you should come check us out. Look, we got. I know they kind of did that in their trailer where they had Paige Van Zandt, they had Chris Weidman, they had Kevin Lee, but they were in these like overly produced, overly AI generated images of it was them, but they were kind of like you could tell it's AI, and they were in these like gladiator suits on Mars.
Well, some of them looked like a kind of low budget version of The Boys, kind of.
Yeah,
And then
and
some
then
of
the
them,
song didn't help it either.
yeah, there was definitely some of them where you're like, that they didn't have time, I guess, to put that guy in an outfit because that's just AI and he looks weird. Uh, and then I don't know, the whole like the future of fighting, and then they're in like weird gladiator outfits, which is older than like that's the past, but then it's got like some LED lights in it, so it's futuristic. Like I didn't get that at all, and also it makes them look weird and like it's not fighting. It looks like they're gonna have like I don't know, the opening like shot kind of looks like it's gonna be a new version of American Gladiators or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're gonna be jousting with like big pipe cleaner deals with like foam on the end,
Mm-hmm.
or they're gonna do some like Nickelodeon guts physical challenges or something. Like it looks weird.
Right. I think that they put so much money into it, where I feel like this just from me, from like as a creative, is just I think that like from a creative aspect would have been cool, especially if you got if you have just unlimited budget, right? Or if not unlimited budget, but you have a very big budget based on what I'm assuming what is a very big budget based on the fighters you've attained. I imagine that trailer must have cost a lot of money, so on and so forth, right? Where you have all those fighters that you had in your trailer, right? Like if you're trying to promote Paige Van Zandt and you're trying to promote Kevin Lee and you're trying to promote Chris Weidman and Anthony Pettis, have highlight reels. I mean, of what they've done. So if to introduce the to a new group of people, a new fight fan base, right? Like generally, probably people who are finding out about it are also hardcore fight fans like us, mixed in with people who are just like casuals who might be like, oh, there's a new fight organization. Okay, why should we watch Paige Van Zandt when she was hitting people and just putting people out? Okay, cool. When Anthony Pettis ran off the cage and did the ninja kick, like put that in there, because obviously they don't mind saying other. I understand, like, oh, you don't want to promote another brand, but they've said on their broadcast a couple of times, like, hey, this person was a former UFC guy and this and that. Big fan of the UFC and big fan of fights. So if you have no problem like mentioning other brands, hey, I'm sure either the fighters can provide you a highlight reel, or you can find a highlight reel, or you know what I mean. Maybe ask the UFC if they could get a highlight reel, or just something, right? Where to get people who don't know who these people are to be interested, right? Maybe you have, shadow box them, shadow box or do something, you know what I mean? Where you can see, hey,
Well, the
this
other thing
fighter,
is, if like let's say the UFC and the PFL are saying like, "Hey, you got to pay this much to get access to that footage because it's our footage and we own it." Like maybe you could just go on your social media and post like a YouTube video that's even if it's the UFC YouTube channel and it's the fighters highlights just so that
yeah,
it's out there somewhere and affiliated with your kind of thing.
and you know what you're getting yourself into, because we know Anthony Pettis, we know Kevin Lee, we know Paige Van Zandt, we know all the fighters that were in that trailer and why they are dope and why they're really like must see TV type, you know what I mean?
Mm.
But to an average rando or a casual fan who didn't follow the sport during the time that they were fighting in the UFC, they might be like, who are these people in this trailer? I'm assuming these people are part of the organization, but why should I, be interested in seeing it? I think that it would have been nice to see like a little highlight reel, especially for the people you're trying to build up. Like, hey, these are the kind of things you can expect to see. Or to have them just stand there, you know what I mean? And kind of be like, ah man, this, right? I think that was another one where I was just like, I think the visuals do a lot, right? Like having a good song and good visuals. You remember when they had the face paint and then there was like the fights were going on in the highlight reels for the old UFC one? That had you being like, man, I'm trying to see what's up with this. Or like even with the old WWE stuff, ever when even in the video games or in the show, it was like scenes of over the years of like, having, let's say for example, Shawn Michaels doing the like elbow drop off the ladder, or like uh someone getting put through a burning table, Mick Foley, the Undertaker. They got Rey Mysterio doing all these flips. It makes you be like, oh man, let me check into this, where I
Mm.
was just I kind of felt like that would have been good too. Yeah, it just, you know what it reminded me of? The overly AI generated trailer felt like high C kind of.
Yeah,
When you're a kid, you're just like, you're like, oh, it looks intriguing, but it doesn't. It's not a whole lot there,
yeah.
because like Gladiator in Mars, just give me some fights. I think that another one that was, yeah,
Well, can we also
yeah.
say from from a brand building perspective, I was able to finally find their YouTube channel.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, it's I went through their website to find it. It's at MMA GFL.
Ah,
And the reason they're so hard to find is because the only video on their channel is the draft from 4 days ago. So
mhm.
they haven't been putting up whatever, like either they haven't been making content that's video form for teasers, or they haven't been putting it up on their YouTube channel, which in either case isn't a great sign of good planning and execution. I mean, having a presence on on YouTube for a sports league is super important. It's one of the like big metrics that even when traditional TV viewership isn't doing well, it's one of the metrics that other sports leagues look to is how are we doing on social media? How is our YouTube views? How many Twitter watches are we getting when we post highlight clips? So to to roll into your draft and people don't know where to find you on YouTube because you don't have any teaser trailers, you didn't have a draft announcement video, like especially if you're going to lean into AI graphics and stuff like that to make things cheaper and quicker, you could get somebody to throw up a 15-second YouTube video about announcing the draft. Here's when it's going to be. Here's where it's going to be. And that would at least have an opening of your YouTube channel so that people can find it more easily, especially if they see the trailer, then they can subscribe so that next time you go live with the draft, it's right there on top of their YouTube feed.
Yeah, I stand corrected. You guys have a YouTube, so that removes off the con off the list and it goes into a pro. But yeah, like you said, that does would help for next time. Because generally, because the one when you type in the GFL, at least the first thing I came across was the another fight channel or DZ and Sport, like wherever it is, like
Yeah.
it's them
Well,
saying, "Hey, we got the draft." I mean, like here's their draft. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, cool.
well, that's a problem on YouTube. And then another problem is, again, I don't know how long ago they came up with the name and how committed they are to it, but there's a publicly traded company that's the first thing when you Google GFL.
Uh,
So let me see, type that back in because I just typed in GFL. So I didn't put in GFL MMA because, like, when I'm looking for the UFC, I just type in UFC. I don't, or if I'm looking for the PFL, I just type in PFL. So GFL is the New York Stock Exchange ticker for GFL Environmental, a waste management company in Canada
huh? Would have never knew.
that was founded in 2007. So, and it's publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So it's not like they wouldn't have seen this if they Googled it for. I mean, I think that's kind of one of the things you do if you're starting a YouTube channel or a podcast or something like that is you do look around to see if anyone else has that name first and how easy or difficult it's going to be for you to be found when people are searching for you. So that's another thing that's not that great. I mean, I still think the name is kind of the least important thing.
Yeah, because I will say this, right? I'm not super hard pressed about the whole like uh while it would have been nice to find like a YouTube channel, right? Or it would have been nice, but the name essentially, right? The name, not too super hard pressed, like, oh, it shares a name with another thing, this and that. I feel like you said, I think that personally, name is probably not as important as like the actual content of it.
Yeah,
Because think about it, like 20, 30 years ago, the words UFC wasn't synonymous with anything.
yeah,
And now it is solely connected to the sport of MMA. You know what I mean? Whereas like when you think MMA, you think UFC. So I think that like as this thing progressed, like I mean, I know we pointed out a lot of cons and like the pros and all that, but it's one of the I'm hoping that this organization does well because as a fight fan, we win both ways. You know what I mean? Like, hey, if this works out well, that means okay, cool. You can watch the UFC fights and then you could watch the GFL fights. You know what I mean? There's more fights to watch. So I feel like it's a great way either way. And then from what it sounds like, they said they want to kind of fill in the gap of once the NFL season's over, you can watch GFL. So they're gonna have like Sunday, like how the NFL has like Sunday games, like the first, the 1 o'clock games and the 4 o'clock games and all that stuff. Essentially having that format for their fights, like two fights on Sundays, a Monday night fight. And I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. Like I'm intrigued, right? And as far as like the teams, from what I was able to put together, right? Cain Velasquez, former heavy UFC heavyweight champion, manager of Team Dubai with Javier Mendez, his coach from AKA, with that had the likes of like DC, Kane, all the Habib and all them. So they got Tyron Woodley, he's the first round pick, got Abu Bakar Nurmagomedov, Derek Brunson, Ali Isaev. It's like an up and coming person who's undefeated Russian fighter. The Team LA has got Sage Northcutt from the one championship, also was part of the UFC at one point. Aspen Ladd, former UFC fighter, former Bellator, former PFL. Tony Ferguson, Uriah Faber. Team London's got Gegard Mousasi. It's a big name. Alexander Gustafsson, Josephine Kutsuson, Brett Johns. Team Miami's got Junior Dos Santos, Anthony Pettis, Yoel Romero. All these are really big names and like big time things. Team Sao Paulo's got Machida as the manager, got Fabricio Verdum, Douglas Lima, an undefeated welterweight from Argentina called named Carlos Petrozula, who's supposed to be big. Camila Reynoso is another undefeated fighter she's from Argentina. You got Team New York, got Kevin Lee, Chris Weidman, Holly Holm. And like these are big names and like seems like it's could be potentially like some big time stuff. So I'm hoping, I think anytime you start something new, there's gonna be some stumbles in the beginning or so, you know what I mean, as you kind of get your feet together. So I'm willing to like over as a fan, like overlook like, hey, there's this that could have been better or that could be better. Because at the end of the day, I think something could always be better about anything, right?
Hmm. I mean,
And while I look at it, I think for right now, from what I've seen, the good still outweigh the bad for me personally. So I'm still interested in seeing. I'm curious to see. I'm still cautiously optimistic where it's like, okay, let me see what the first fight card is talking about. You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, I still think it's worth looking into. They haven't taken any big missteps where you'd say, "Hey, I don't even want to see what this is going to be." But there are just some things I'd like to see play out that I don't necessarily think are going to be great ideas, but I'm at least willing to let them try. And I think
Mhm.
that one of the things that kind of tier two and tier three organizations offer to the kind of landscape is if they try something new, that at least lets us all kind of figure out if that's worth doing on a higher level. So it's if we could get, a full season of if they were to try open scoring, that would be something where we could say, oh, this really helped the fights, or this hurt the fights, or this didn't really affect the fights at all. That would be something that could serve the kind of landscape of MMA while also being an interesting experiment that people would tune in for who are hardcores, who want to see, okay, well, what's that going to be like? I think a lot of people are going to be tuning in to see with the weight cutting policy that they've announced, where they're moving all the weight classes up, you know, 10 pounds or so. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at that. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea. I think people are still going to weight cut anyway, unless you change when the weigh in is. Uh, but hey, they're going to try it and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. I'm interested. I'm still interested to see what it is. I know they said that I know from Ariel's interview with the founder of GFL, he said that they're in talks with all of the major kind of broadcast partners right now. So I take that to mean ESPN, Netflix, you know, uh, pay per view type situation. I think for them, I think ESPN Plus might be the best. ESPN Plus, I think might be the best avenue just because so many people already have it,
Mm.
and it's a very easily accessible thing. But if you already have ESPN, you're not gonna have to like go out and go get something. But if you sign with something niche, I think it's gonna be kind of hard. Or Netflix, because everyone got Netflix. It's very easy to like access.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who's interested in the type of conversations that they have and how transparent they can be about that. And definitely who's still gonna end up with it in the end, because all of the streaming services and all that, they're always looking for live sports content, especially if there can be some sort of proven audience for it. So it'll be interesting to see where they end up and how they kind of manage, like you're saying, that schedule of Sundays and Mondays.
Because speaking of another organization that kind of is making some changes, because PFL is also changing a lot. You know, they're getting rid. I don't know if you heard it, but they're actually getting rid of the whole team, like not team, but they're all getting rid of their whole bracket system type
Mhm.
situation. And they're also changing it from like the $1 million tournament where it's like, hey, if you win this tournament, you get $1 million, to now it's going to be 500,000.
Mm.
And they're going to be changing up like their points things. So people who, like, I think earlier it may have become like kind of a golden handcuffs type situation where they were kind of like, oh, here's these really good fighters, but they're not in this side, this bracket, this and that. So it seems like both, I think they're trying to undo the damage they've kind of like self-inflictedly done. But what do you think?
I think it's interesting. Uh, I think the way that Bellator, so now they're killing off the Bellator name,
Yeah, it's just
and
PFL now.
some of the fighters whose contracts they don't want to take over, they're releasing. It's You've seen like Gegard Mousasi is going to be in GFL. Uh, Patricio Pitbull is trying to get into the UFC. So this seems like a thing we were talking about at the time of why are you keeping Bellator alive when you just bought it? And really, why are you buying Bellator if they're going to go under anyway? Unless you wanted the fighters. And then you found out that because of their contracts, you don't want the fighters. So why'd you do it in the first place? It's not like Bellator was a successful thing. They had good fighters, but if you're not going to keep that part, what was the point of buying them in the first place? The name had no real value. It's it feels like once again we're talking about another PFL misstep, and we're also a good. How many years has Francis been there? 3 years? 2 years?
Yeah,
So he's been there like 3 years, and he's fought for them one time, and he still brought a lot of attention for them, but it just feels like everything associated with PFL isn't kind of going how they thought, and so now this is a retool to try and do something else now.
yeah. It feels like it's like they're doing a lot of damage control right now because there's been a lot of self-inflicted wounds. I feel like
Mm,
done by PFL. Them like where it's like the Francis thing. Francis signing was major. It was really big, right?
mm,
But then also, like you said, it's he fought one time, and the Francis fight. Well, Francis got paid, I think, like $10 million, and I'm very happy for him for that because you love to see fighters get paid and get taken care of, right? Like it's
mm.
glad to see Francis get paid. A guy with a phenomenal story and just sounds like a great guy, right? So you're happy to see him get a major payday. But then also Francis got paid 10 million, and then the PFL what made 10,000 did like 10,000 pay-per-view buys. So it was a really low amount of pay-per-views that they sold. But then also on top of another kind of self-inflicted wound of the or another problems PFL kind of created for themselves, like you said, where they bought Bellator, and instead of just kind of folding Bellator into PFL and being like, hey, we're PFL 2.0 now. You know, like how UFC got Pride, and eventually all the Pride fighters became UFC fighters, right?
Mm.
And it boosted the talent. It boosted a lot of the things that were going on. You know, I mean, there's a lot of really great fighters that came over from Pride into the UFC, right? PFL, instead of just involved in like taking the Bellator fighters, making them PFL fighters, and kind of going on that way. Remember, they did that weird kind of like semi tournament where it was the PFL's best guys against Bellator's best guys. And it was kind of like structured as like, hey, we are the, if Bellator was seen as the second closest thing to the UFC, hey, we are now the UFC's like competition. Like we are the number two in the world of combat sports. But then they had the Bellator versus PFL type tournament, and like every single PFL fighter except for like one guy lost to the organization that they are absorbing. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, which was all, I mean, how could you expect that? But then also, that doesn't help your case any to be like, hey, we're the second best fight organization if you can't even be number one in your own like bubble. The
Yeah.
like you have this bubble where it's you and Bellator, and you lose every fight to the Bellator guys, like just about everyone, and then you absorb them and go, but we're still number two. It's like you lost to a company that don't even exist now.
Yeah.
And then on top of the kind of ranking, you know, like it used to be the big draw to PFL was the $1 million tournament. But then also certain guys weren't getting fights or like certain people weren't getting paid. And I feel that like certain people who wanted to fight, but it wasn't matching up with the tournament type thing. So I think that it kind of did more harm than good. And then, you know, now there's more fighters being like, hey, we're not getting paid or we're not getting fights. So, hey, can you this or that? It just seemed like there was a lot going on. And, you know, there's pros and cons to every fight organization, but it just seemed like on the PFL side, now they're trying to do a lot of damage control. And I think it's good that they noticed that and just being like, hey, let's kind of do this and that, you know, to try to rebuild and revamp. But I wonder what's the reaction from PFL fighters who might have been trying out for the $1 million tournament, but now it's 500,000. You know what I mean? Because they want to be a place where people want to stay and fight, but I, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like most people, the UFC is the main goal, right?
Mm.
If you're a fighter, you're trying to get into the to the best of the best. And I don't see. I mean, it could. It's possible, and it's a longer road, but I don't know. I don't see how that could happen. How to keep fighters? I don't know what's the thing that PFL can do to keep top talent rather than top talent working in just like, hey, I'm gonna do a few fights here and then get signed to the UFC. Maybe they work as a feeder organization, being like, hey, if uh, the UFC is the NFL and PFL is like the Canadian leagues, like, hey, you work your way up this through the if the UFC is Monday Night Raw and the PFL be like NXT, be like, hey, this is where you prove yourself, work your way up, and then boom to the big show. But I know that's not what they want. But I don't see how they keep top talent based on
Yeah.
everything that's gone on.
Well, and maybe the kind of model ends up being a different promotion. Maybe it ends up being kind of BKFC because of all the secondary. I know they're not MMA technically, but they do live in that MMA world. I would say MMA fans are kind of their main target. I don't know.
Yeah, still combat sports. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what boxing people think of BKFC. I don't know if they like that or if they think that's like uh like not real boxing, or they think it's like some other thing. Like I don't know enough boxing people to get a good survey of that, but I think in the combat sports realm, BKFC seems to be kind of the one who is able to do real business and get real fans in real buildings
Yeah,
and
they
get
sold.
attention for themselves.
If I'm not mistaken, they sold out an arena in like I think what Philly, I think it was, maybe
Yeah,
Pennsylvania,
let me check how many people that was.
because BKFC has come a long way from where it started. Like for anyone who doesn't know, it's like the bare knuckle box. And I think you know who has had a career resurgency. I feel like Mike Perry.
Hmm.
He is like the face of BKFC. I feel like, at least to someone who doesn't know too much about it. I at least I like when I think his face has become synonymous with BKFC. Where you think about bare knuckle boxing, you think Mike Perry, and Mike Perry vice versa, right? Where the events I've seen, I was like, oh man, like this is pretty interesting. You know what I mean? Uh, I think that they do a. I feel like BKFC does what PFL should have done,
Yeah,
in my
and by the
opinion.
way, that crowd in Philly, it was in the Wells Fargo Center, and it was 17,762 fans. That's a UFC size crowd.
Yeah, they've done a really good job of cultivating their fan base and cultivating like a following and interesting fights and fighters. You know what I mean? Where yeah, all props to like to them to the BKFC crowd and group. Like yeah, like they've done a really great job. Like because I remember when it first started, like when they said, "Hey, we're opening up a bare knuckle boxing type thing," and I know some people were for it, some people weren't. Um, but over time, the growth they've had has been amazing. Like what they've done to go from where they used to be to now, you're selling out an arena with 17,000 fans. Like props to them.
Yeah, for sure. And on the business side, they recognized that they needed more people to come in and help them with how fast they're growing, and they partnered with Triller to help them with the
Uh-huh.
production and the marketing and all that stuff. So it's when when we're talking about people in the space making wrong moves, BKFC is a really good example of an organization making the right moves and looking like they're sustainable and they can keep going and repeat what they're doing successfully and embracing entertainment and having fun and being an alternative to the UFC rather than just trying to copy them or doing some other like sports type thing. It's BKFC might have the, fighting championship afterwards, but they're very much doing their own thing and making it work.
Yeah, and and props too. I'm always here for more fights, more events, more organizations that come up. And